So right now we're doing surveillance flights over Syria where we're trying to figure out where ISIS is on the ground and what we can do. We're also doing pinpoint strikes against ISIS in Iraq. And now the FBI issued a kind of interesting statement about what's going on. Let's take a look. It is difficult to predict triggers that will contribute to homegrown violent extremists attempting acts of violence. Lone wolf terrorists present law enforcement with limited opportunities to detect and disrupt plots, which frequently involve simple plotting against targets of opportunity. So basically what they're saying is we're doing all this stuff there, and there's a chance that they're going to hit us here. So we got a theme here of like fear-mongering kind of stuff. But do we have to worry that any of this stuff is going to come here?
I think we absolutely have to worry about lone wolves. I would be more concerned about people like that than actual groups over here colluding to do something, you know. That's what I would be more concerned about.
Although Rick Perry said ISIS is coming through the Mexican border. That's what he said.
Rick Perry, man, that guy. He's had a bit of it.
I thought he was in jail, actually.
Yeah,
but
right?
but that's what he said.
Didn't they find, there was an American that was killed last weekend, right, who had joined ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I worry that there are people with American passports that have, you know, converted to this horrific ideology and are now...
Right, and then they're going to come back here.
So I think it's it's worth looking into and you know, being mindful of.
Yeah,
sure.
So White House Press Secretary Jay Earnest chimed in on it as well. We're concerned about the threat that is posed by ISIL, but it is the assessment, as stated by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff by the intelligence community, that there currently is not an active plot underway to attack the homeland by ISIL. You know, I don't know. When I hear this stuff, I kind of think like, remember before 9/11 when everybody was saying, well, Bush was warned a zillion times. Mm-hmm. And then in another part, it's like, all right, if they don't know, they don't know. I guess for me, it's like, I don't know what to believe anymore. Do you suffer from some of that too?
Well, I don't know what to believe, other than the fact that don't believe anything. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Right. I think in the last 5 years with the news media, we were talking earlier about how everything isn't vetted like it used to be, and how rumors can run amok within the news organization. I think you can't believe everything.
Yeah. So anything. How much of this is just that? Like I turn on CNN and like they got one guy on one side and one guy on the other, and then they don't analyze what they say; they just say it. And then you obviously know what you're getting out of Fox, and you know what you're getting out of MSNBC. So there's just nobody, like there's nothing that I turn on where I'm like, oh, now I got sort of like an honest assessment.
That's why I watch the Rubin Report.
That's why you're on the Rubin Report.
That's why I'm on the Rubin Report.
But I mean, that's what I'm trying to do is some, like, I don't have all the answers, but we can at least discuss this in some kind of open-ended way to make people think or do a little bit of research. But really, like, how do you go about getting your information on this? Like, what you're going to trust? You watch the Vice stuff, obviously.
Yeah, you know what? I was watching, if you Google Vice, they've done a fantastic 5-part documentary about ISIS where they, I mean, like, the journalists that they have working for them, I can't even imagine, like, the situations that they put themselves in. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the best things that I've seen, the Vice coverage of ISIS and what's going on in Syria. Like, just incredible, you know, scenes of their indoctrination of children, the way they police Raqqa, you know, like making sure that the women are wearing, like, you know, canvas, you know, covering everything except for their eyes. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm watching an episode of Homeland or something. I just started watching that show. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Where do you stand on like the airstrikes and all this stuff? Like, are you cool with it? Everyone seems to be cool with airstrikes right now. Right. That's like the cool thing. Like, no boots on the ground. Nobody wants that. But like airstrikes, yeah.
I actually am an Army brat. So my father has incredible medical issues due to being in Vietnam. He's deaf. He can barely see. You know, and amongst other things. And I feel like no boots on the ground. But then it's hard for me to say we should only air bomb if we're having such a big discussion about the Palestinians and the Israelis. Like, you know what I mean? We all have an opinion about that, but now let's, you know what I mean? Let's not even talk about airstrikes in Syria. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. So is that also part of it, that we have such an inability to have more than one conversation at a time in America? Like, we just went through like a month-long Gaza thing where that's all everyone talked about. Now that sort of seems like a ceasefire is going to hold as of yesterday. So now we can move on to something else. Like, we seem completely unable to talk about two things at once. What's that about?
I think that we should...
Is that just the Twitter generation?
We should combine our conversation with the Islamic State with our conversation about surrounding Ebola by dropping Ebola into, you know, into the hive mind of the IS.
People are going to think you're serious about that. I would drop PlayStation 4 because then you just hook that thing up and then they have something else to do, or just give them a lot of porn.
Yeah,
don't you think if they had more access to porn?
Because they're all doing it for the virgins, right?
Right.
Like, just to show that they're all just incredibly sexually
I
frustrated.
think they have enough access to porn.
You think they have plenty of access?
If my kids have access to porn, those terrorists have access to porn.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right, so final thought on all this ISIS stuff is, are we just damned if we do, damned if we don't? Like, we fucked up with the first Iraq war, then we left, the whole place went to shit. These Yazidi that were on the mountain, 48,000 of them were gonna get slaughtered. Nobody did anything, so we ended up saving them, but now more are being killed now. Like, it's just this endless, like, if the US helps, it's always good sort of short term, then we fuck everything up, then we help. Like, it's just, is that it? Is that our place in the world forever?
I think it's going to be, that's how it's going to be forever unless people understand nothing is a temporary fix. You know, I got to perform for the troops as a comedian in Iraq, and even then, and this was 4 years ago, as we were out in the forward operating bases doing comedy, you would be standing next to one or two soldiers here and there, and they would all say, "This is for nothing. As soon as we leave, this is done."
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. And like with my parents, my mother was from Berlin, Germany. My father was in the army. She was a war bride. It's like we were there for 30, 40 years. And that's, if we're going to do something, people need to understand that's the commitment you have to make.
Yeah,
it's
by the
not
way,
just,
we still have like 40,000 troops in Germany now. Nobody knows why they're there. I don't think they have to be there at this point. But.
Well, because I think, and I could be completely wrong, it's like when they airlift people out or they need to refuel and a bunch of stuff. I think that's that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's interesting to me that people just don't understand nothing is a temporary fix.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, I think that's a really great point. Why do you think the troops knew it 4 years ago? You know? Like, not that we should have stayed. We obviously can't just stay everywhere forever. But like, why, if troops were talking about it to the comedians?
I feel like it, because with my experience with that, and I don't mean to take so much time, but my experience with that is that, you know, when they had these forward operating bases, they did have people from the community participating in the forward operating bases. Maybe they helped cook or clean or whatever they did, but it was usually outcasts from the Iraqi community. So, the people that were entrenched within families and within tribes that had good standing weren't participating. And when you're an American soldier and you're seeing you know what I mean, that the outcast of their society being like they had, the tendency was a lot of gay men or women that didn't have good standing in the community that were participating in helping the Americans, you know.
I mean, I've never heard that before. That's fascinating.
That's my take on it, you know. So I could be completely wrong, but for a young soldier, a 22-year-old kid from East LA saying, yeah, this is silliness. This is silliness. Makes you really think, God, all this money that was spent here and all this. And if you're performing as a woman, I can say whatever I want to arguably the strongest, physically strongest, least educated men in our country. And they're so appreciative that people made the trip, or you can say whatever you want. And then to see a woman, Iraqi woman, listening and then put her thing on and then have to, you know, go 50 feet outside the wall and she can't even look a man in the eye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's astounding. So I think if young soldiers can figure that out, the fact that, you know, politicians can't is really amazing to me.